I'm Karen Panetta, and I'd like to welcome you all. Today, I'm going to be talking about a few different things. Some things about why I got into engineering, and then talk about some things that might help you just propel your career if you're restarting or you're just a new engineer trying to get into the field and you have lots of questions. Well, I'm here for you, and so is IEEE. So let me begin by telling you a little bit about me. I am a computer and electrical engineer, and I graduated from Boston University and Northeastern University with my master's and PhD. I did it entirely part-time, except for my undergraduate. I did my master's and PhD part-time while I worked full-time, and that's quite a feat, even by today's standards. I worked for a company called Digital Equipment Corporation, which today you might know as another known company called Intel, and I was a computer architect. How did I get into computers? Well, essentially, it was my dad. I really didn't know anything whatsoever about engineering, what engineers did, and computers were new. My father said, go into computers, yeah, that'll be the future. And he was right, and I enjoyed it. I loved software programming, and I had to know more about what was inside that box. So that's how I decided to become a computer engineer. But I really thought computer engineers did what? They built computers, and that's exactly what I did when I graduated. I designed CPUs, and I enjoyed it, but after a while I wanted to go back and know more about all the different fields that I could apply my skills to. I loved robotics, I loved animation, I loved visualization, I loved music, I loved everything. So how do you combine all these different things? And that's why I decided that maybe I should go back for a PhD. And if you can teach, then you can also do research. And I thought, what a great way to develop your own career, your own path, by picking your own research fields. So I've gotten to do everything I've dreamed about. I get to do animation, I get to do the robotics, I get to do signal processing, I get to do voice and music, and most importantly, I get to help people all around the world. Even though I may not physically be there with them, that's the great thing about technology, is it allows us to reach thousands and millions of people and use our skills and technology to help benefit all humanity. So let's talk a little bit about the first thing. Why do I want to talk about careers? Well, first of all, I've noticed that there's a lot of drop-off of women in engineering, predominantly after we enter the field. So we've got this barrier that you have very few women entering it, and then the next thing you know is you get these engineering and technology degrees, and guess what happens? We don't see women staying in technology. A lot of people think it's because women go off and have families, and that may be true, but women also want to see the big picture. They want to feel useful, and of course we want to make money and progress in our careers. And typically the careers that bring us to those might be outside of engineering. A lot of women go into patent law, they go into marketing, and they even become medical doctors. So that's not a loss, but at the same time we still need women to remain technical and remain in the technical fields. What I want to focus on today is for those of you that are thinking about or have gone off and had children and just left the field. And that's really tough, because if you think about it, when you go on vacation, you pack clothes, you prepare yourself, and most importantly, you bring the keys to your home so you can get back into the house when you return from your vacation. Well, we don't do that when we have children. A lot of people just think about it and say, well, I'm going to raise my children and I'll worry about it when the time comes. And that's what I would call today's theme, talking about career maintenance. Yes, it's okay and it's great that people go off and can raise families, but we need to support these talented women that are already educated, that already have this vast knowledge and expertise on how to come back into the workplace, how to utilize those skills and bring them back into the workforce. Because without them, well, it's going to be a really tough road to get past without a lot of women in engineering, especially if we're not recruiting that new pipeline of them. So let's start at the beginning. What do you do? How can you do this? Well, most of you know me for my Nerd Girls program. My Nerd Girls program is an outreach program that I run that takes young college girls and gets them to do complex projects that benefit communities. My Nerd Girls have saved National Historic Landmarks by using renewable energy to power lighthouses. We help disabled people by developing assistive technologies and lots of other different projects. The goal of the projects are to help not only teach the girls how to do large-scale projects, but also how to act as a team and how to do new research and build their own research skills, as well as applying all those things that they learn as undergraduates to real-life projects that benefit humanity. Now, along the way, I got an opportunity to notice that there's a lot of displaced engineers out there, predominantly talented women. And what I need is some of these projects are so big and so large and my team's got so large, I couldn't do it all alone. So what I decided was, why not have some help? Why not call in some of these wonderful, talented women and displaced engineers and help them retool, learn new skills, and share their expertise as mentors with this young team that I had. So what we did was we got a few people from industry that had been laid off, and we also got a couple of stay-at-home moms who couldn't make it into an office on a regular basis, and we started training them on new technology. So I trained them on field programmable gate arrays. They got to learn new software languages, and they got to learn solar and renewable energy technologies. At the beginning, everybody's intimidated by new technology, and that's why we work on teams, because together we can really do and achieve anything. So what did we do? We got these teams together. They would meet with either virtually or by phone, or even some of them would even come in and commute to meet with these young ladies to help them review their specifications, help give them technical guidance, and also learn along the way with them. So this was a great opportunity for them to learn as well as the young ladies. Within 6 to 8 months of every participant from industry or stay-at-home mom, we had every single one of them find jobs. So how did that happen? Well, think of it this way. You're retooling and you're reskilling, you're to have new skills. What you're really doing is you're beefing up your resume. How do you do that? Well, if you send out a resume, or you're going to sell a house, think about it. You're going to sell your house, you're going to put all your junk away, you're going to clean out your closets, and you're probably going to apply a fresh coat of paint. Well, that's what you need to do to retool to get back out in industry. We need a fresh coat of paint on our resumes. And as my saying would always go, if your resume isn't catching on, then you need to change the bait. And the bait that we want to change it with is new skills that are current and will make you employable. One of the first things that we get our people to do is we get them to be reviewers. So think about it. You might say, well, I don't know anything about image processing. Well, you've got the math and technical background to learn. And I think that we can also help you by using some of our IEEE resources to do that. There are a lot of different journals and access to our greatest and latest newsletters. They help you know what's up and coming and what's current. So when you get to review somebody's journal paper or submission, you look at it and it's like, well, I know the math here. You might not all know all the terms, but it quickly brings you up to speed on what's the latest and greatest technology. That's how I got to learn any new field that I'm interested in. Robotics, I review for IEEE TEPRA conferences, which is in robotics. If I want to know about signal processing, I look at the signal processing journals. If I want to know about image processing, I look at image processing journals. And if I want to know what's current in policy and things like that, I go to IEEE USA and look at some of their government policy and training programs. And that's one great way to think of how to get into these things. You don't need to be physically in the office or have a 9-to-5 type of job to do this. Now, one of the things that we work on is your skills. When you work and partner with a university, there are lots of students that need mentors. And it's not necessarily just through a program like my Nerd Girls program. Every single student has to have what we call a senior capstone design experience project. What that means is it's a project that's supposed to encapsulate everything they've learned in their undergraduate years and pull it all together in a meaningful project. Now, doing that is a daunting task for many of these students, and having somebody from industry or having someone with expertise who's been in industry helps quite a bit. So think about some types of projects that you might be interested in helping on. Professors are always eager to have your help. And students, somehow, they respect you more than they respect the professors, because after all, you've been out there. Even though I've been out there, they believe you over us. So it's kind of cool that you can come in and say, you know what, this won't work, and it's not cost effective, or you haven't considered these types of considerations. So we need you to do these types of things, and it works out really well. One of the other things that I'm looking at is how can you build your career and keep it maintained while you stay at home. So you have a family, you have a young family, you're now at stay at home. How can you keep involved? Again, being a reviewer from all these conferences is very easy. We're looking for lots of help. The other thing you can do is you can actually do research yourself and look at topics for helping others. So when you share your experiences with us, we learn about what's challenging you and we know how to help you. There are lots of ways that you can help yourself. One of them is looking at what are your interests. Look at it as an opportunity to think about, well, okay, I was designing CPUs for many years in computer technology. I don't want to do that anymore. And this is a great time for me to change. What am I interested in? So think about that. And if you don't know, it's time to look around and see what kind of things are out there. So you can start looking at, maybe you see a problem in your community. That's the other great opportunity, is that public school systems really suffer from a lack of educated engineers to come in and give them help or mentorship. Teachers are overwhelmed with requirements, and to come in and say, okay, now you're going to learn engineering and do an engineering project is really quite a daunting task. So one of the simplest ways for you to jump in with both feet forward is to go to www.tryengineering.org or www.trycomputing.org or the realworldengineering.org websites, all sponsored by IEEE, and find these projects. They're K through 12 or freshman types of first year college projects, and you can take those into your local community and go into your schools and do them with children. The really cool thing about them is it takes less than 10 minutes for you to prepare yourself on how to do these things. One of the first things that scares young people off from math, science, and engineering is that we tell them they have to be the very best at it. Not true. They don't have to be the very best at it. And when you say that, you're putting a filter on them right away. We don't want to filter them. We want to welcome everybody, because engineering is about innovation and imagination. So let's say you get one of these projects, you go into your local school or even your own child's school, you work with the teachers and you show them how to do these projects. They're very low costs, probably pennies, maybe less than $5 to do a classroom of 35 children. And that's really great. So you go in, you do one of these outreach things, and the beautiful thing about it is that students are not inundated with equations or scary math and things like that. It's all about critical thinking and using their imagination and connecting what engineering does for humanity. So one of my favorite ones is called Ship the Chip. And you can actually see me doing that experiment on IEEE TV. We did it with 100 middle school girls. And matter of fact, some of those students were, they weren't the best at math and science because they had mental disabilities, as well as some of them had some physical disabilities. That's the beautiful thing about these projects, is they are open for everyone, and they're really fun. So we used a bunch of potato chips, and we had these students figure out a way to package a potato chip so that you could send it via regular mail and that it would be received at the other end in one piece. And the other little caveat is you have to be able to eat that potato chip when you receive it. Well, we had a lot of fun doing that, and it talks about manufacturing, it talks about packaging, it talks about stresses and strains, and we saw these kids playing soccer with the boxes and kicking these potato chip boxes around, learning how to do real stress testing just like in the real world. And when we were done, they understood that it's not just about figuring out how big the box should be or the stresses or strains on the box. It was all about figuring out how people are going to use this and how it's going to solve a problem. So that's the first thing you can do, is start at your own local community and get out there and help do some outreach. One of the things that I don't like about most mentoring programs is they teach young girls that they can be teachers. Now, education, I'm a teacher by heart anyway, is a great thing. But if we want young women to be empowered and challenge themselves and go beyond their own boundaries, we have to be able to teach them how to do research and put things together that they've never seen before. And that's one of the things and one of the major components of my Nerd Girls program, is it always takes major challenges facing humanity and makes us work as a team to figure out solutions. Now, I mentioned one of the projects that we did was using renewable energy to power a remote island. It had 2 houses on it. It had no electricity, but it had great potential for wave and wind power as well as solar energy. Well, we couldn't do wind power because even though it had the best wind maps, which means it had lots of potential wind on the island, it had a bird sanctuary there, and we had to preserve that bird sanctuary. So we also got to work with the environment. So we saw that our engineering solutions have to work in harmony with the communities that we serve, whether they're people or animals. Now, when we first did our design, some of my designs, you come up with the ones that will really work. Of course, one of the first designs the students came up with, where the batteries weighed over 200 pounds, and that probably wouldn't have been an issue, except you have to carry them up 225 steps, so in a very small area. So the batteries were too big. When you look at problems like that, you say, oh wait, there are physical constraints. We built a solar car, and one of the things that we looked at, when I should say we didn't look at, was when we were done, would it fit in the garage? Simple things like that, but that's why you have multiple perspectives on it. So cost comes into play, because most of the solutions that students are going to come up with are going to be very, very expensive, or using technologies that maybe aren't suitable for islands or saltwater air. And it's great because they get to see that everything has real world components to it. There are parasitic effects everywhere that we have to worry about. Gravity actually does matter, and so does friction. So we can't neglect all these things like we might do in some of our school book problems. The beautiful thing is that they learn that the answers aren't always in the back of the book. And even though I'm a computer and electrical engineer, I may not know a lot about solar cars, but with a team and learning about solar energy, we can put the pieces all together. So, how about you telling me what you're interested in, and maybe I can answer some of your questions. I would love to answer anything about your careers or outreach, or maybe you're thinking about going off for a master's or a business degree. I think that furthering your education, there's always wonderful opportunities to do so. And again, getting new courses under your belt is another way to refresh and brighten up your resume so that you can get a new job. One way that you might ask is say, okay, so I get a new skill. How can I possibly, find a new job? Well, all those folks that I talked about being part of my team, we work and we present. One of the other things that the Nerd Girls do is after they do projects, we go out to communities, we go out to government organizations, and we go out to companies to share what we've learned. And believe me, when you show up with a team of polished young ladies that talk like they're seasoned engineers that have been out there for a decade, people take notice. And they take notice of the mentors who helped them get there. That's how we help connect you with new job opportunities. So I have a question from Pam. How could a lady re-entering the workforce become part of my team? Well, that's really easy. You can visit nerdgirls.com, and we have an outreach tab, and on the outreach tab it talks about all the different types of flavors of participation you can have. You could start an event or a sponsorship type of thing at your company, which means that maybe you get together with a group at your company and you figure out, we'd like to mentor or do some mentoring for students. How do we partner on a project? For those of you that are trying to re-enter the workforce and don't have an industry contact, well, we can talk to you and find out what it is you're interested in. One of the things that has to be synergistic is You need to be interested in what you want to do. We want to build what you're interested in. Now, I've had people say, well, solar energy sounds great, but where am I going to find a career in solar energy? And it really wasn't the solar energy topic that got them the job. It was the technologies and the simulations and the new software that we use to model those designs that got them the job. So what's your expertise, and how do you think that you'd like to grow that? You want to join our team? There's hundreds of us out there that would love to have you. And IEEE Women in Engineering would be happy to pair you with one of our mentors or do some matching for you. My email is simply karen@computer.org. And if you want to get to know me or you want to get to join one of my teams, I'd be happy to have you join me. If there are other questions, I would love to hear them. If there's any young people out there who are thinking about, or in college and thinking about they don't know what to do with their life, I'm happy to answer questions about that too, because I was one of those kids that didn't know what to do with my life. And I still think that my career is evolving. I never think that this is the end, or that I'm just going to settle in and do the same thing forever. And you shouldn't either. You should always be looking forward to something new and exciting. And if that day comes where you're sitting in your cubicle and you're staring at your reflection in your monitor, it's time. It's definitely time for you to move on. And IEEE Women in Engineering is here to help you do that. One of the things that we have as a resource is IEEE Women in Engineering magazine. Oh, by the way, this is the cover. She is not a princess. She is not a princess. She is not a witch. She's actually a mythical power woman from, like a video game type of thing, of a time long before any of us existed. And one of those things that we talk about in the magazine is powerful role models, so that you can see their career paths. And we ask them the difficult questions. We ask them, what was your challenges? So that you don't think it was really, that you're the only one that's ever struggled with a difficult situation. We also promote and talk about events and how people are getting together and how they're making a difference doing outreach, and the different type of outreach activities you can jump on board and do things for. So there's also opportunities for that. Now, there's a lot of people that say, I don't have a story to tell. Each one of you has a story to tell. No matter what part of the world you're in, we want to hear from you. Even if you're a student, students are really important, because unless we know what you're going through now, we won't know how things have changed, and we won't know how to help you. So I really love hearing from students and love hearing how it is that you see your position and what kinds of challenges you see. I have a question from Mara. And the question is, can you talk about the importance of organizations like IEEE to help get you your next job? Well, I love IEEE, and I have to be honest, IEEE has been instrumental in my career. I started out as a sophomore, that's a second-year student in college, when I joined IEEE. And I think the most amazing thing that ever happened was my student branch conducted something called a Student Professional Awareness Conference. At IEEE, we call those SPACs. And IEEE sponsors and sent in a wonderful, seasoned professional from a different state. He came in, they flew him in, no charge to the students, and he came in on a weekend, volunteered to come in and spend this time with us. And we spent a weekend with this gentleman, and he really empowered each and every one of us. He's still with IEEE today. He's still doing SPACs, and they've even named an IEEE USA award after him. That's Jim Watson. Jim Watson was probably one of the first people that I met from IEEE that said, hey, you're worth something. And I thought, well, maybe it's my grades, maybe it's, I'm not the best student, maybe I'm not, I kept finding reasons why I wouldn't succeed. And that's the first thing you have to get out of your head is, no, if you can make it through this engineering education and get that degree, you can overcome pretty much anything, because you're used to real struggles, and you're used to challenges, and you got through them. It doesn't matter whether you got out with that great GPA or whether you just got out. You got there because you got that degree and because you had the motivation and perseverance. Once I finished with the undergraduate, I found that having IEEE experience, I got the opportunity to work at a conference, an IEEE conference. as a student, what was I doing? I was handing out proceedings. I actually would register people. I worked at the registration booth over the summer, and I was amazed at how many people would ask me for my resume. And I was shocked. I was saying, I'm just handing out, how do they know I'm even any good? What made them notice me was the fact that I took time out of my schedule to volunteer, to be there, to interact with these people, and just showing that I was interested. People would want to help you when they see you want to help yourself. And I had lots and lots of offers to interview for companies where a lot of my peers, when I graduated during a downturn economy, were having struggling to just utilize on-campus recruiting and weren't getting those jobs. I was very successful getting my first job, and one of the first things they asked me was about an operating system that I had never heard of. And the only reason I had ever heard of it was because I actually opened those proceedings and I flipped through them and I read about some papers that were interesting to me. At the time, I probably didn't even understand maybe 25% of what was in the paper, but I learned enough to know some of the key components or what the latest technology was, and that made a huge difference. So I have another question. One of the question comes from Sherry, and she's saying, how did I first get introduced to WIE? Well, I didn't even know WIE existed until past President Arthur Winston approached me and says, well, you're doing all this outreach, you're doing all this great stuff for women. Why aren't you in Women in Engineering? So I went and I investigated what Women in Engineering was. It actually, it was we have societies, you're all probably familiar with the IEEE societies, which are technical, but then we had the Women in Engineering, and I said, hey, this is a great opportunity for me to meet the other women that are out there doing electrical engineering, computer engineering, doing the math and science. I mean, we are the largest professional organization in the world supporting women across these STEM fields. So I thought it was great because I wouldn't be the only electrical or computer engineer or computer person in the whole world in a room by myself anymore. Now I had the opportunity to network with all these women. And I got to go to a few WIE meetings, and I met these amazing women who have served as wonderful role models and mentors for me. I got to meet past President, IEEE President Leah Jameson, who is the rock star of projects for benefiting humanity. And I got to meet other prominent women in industry as well as academia who really reached out to us because we were members of IEEE Women in Engineering. It's like a very nice community, so you're not like a stranger anymore. And I think that that was one of the nicest things I found about it. It wasn't just about all the famous people. It was about the famous people and helping us become more supportive in helping us achieve our own goals. That's kind of a rare thing to find today, and that's why I really love IEEE WIE. One of the other questions we have is, what is the best way to get connections interested in sharing job opportunities? So I think that when we talk about getting connections interested in sharing job opportunities, well, there's lots of ways. When we talk about sharing job opportunities, I don't know what you mean. If you mean getting people to give you opportunities and say, here's an opening for you, or here's where our, these are the availability. Those are the types of things I'm going to assume that you mean by sharing opportunities. I think everybody who works at a company, when they hire somebody, they want to hire somebody, they say it's all about networking. And if you think about it, if you're going to work on a project, you want to make sure that people that you hire are going to do the work and that they're going to be great team players with you. So most likely, if I work at a company, I'm going to reach out to a community of people that I trust and people that I'm going to enjoy working with. No one's going to hire someone that wants to work with someone who's going to give them a hard time or isn't a great team player, or someone that they don't get along with. And I think that that was one of the things that, as I find in IEEE Women in Engineering, is when somebody puts out the call and says, does anybody have any ideas for, I'm looking for a job in robotics. Well, there are tons of new robotics companies out there. And matter of fact, there's a lot of new opportunities in car companies. I don't know if you know, but the United States, for the first time in decades, actually has new car companies that are based on electric vehicles and hybrids, which is a great opportunity for women in design. There's all aspects of it. One of the things you have to be careful of is people sometimes think that if their expertise is not in that field, that they can't apply. And one of the things that we give examples of is, a robotics company. They do a lot of operating systems, all the algorithms for moving those robots around. They're all the concepts used in operating systems theory. There's tons of software. It's not just mechanical engineering or robotics. There's also understanding, product management, things like that. So I don't think that a company has to have what you want in the title. Most companies have lots of opportunities there. And if you're looking for a specific one, you know what? Post something on the IEEE Women Engineering Facebook page and you will be shocked at how many people will respond to you. We'll be happy to respond to you. So I have another question. Reentry may mean getting to the right people quickly. Are you planning to build a network? Well, I have a network. I have a network, and my network is now your network. So if you need help, we're here for you. And getting to people quickly means getting those openings quickly. Sometimes we know, or our insiders know, when there's a job opportunity coming up before it's actually posted to the entire world. So that's one way to be able to get there. I have a really good question. It says, does your team extend to overseas engineer students or only those in the US? Absolutely not. We are international. And I'll give you one of my favorite examples is we did a project we did the largest database tracking autism in the entire world for India. It's now tracking 5 million people, and doctors are using it to help understand why young girls under the age of 4 are predominantly affected with autism and blindness. What do I know, or what did I know about autism and blindness? Absolutely nothing. What did I learn from this experience? A whole lot. And I actually saw how these people are going to use it. I understood the culture. I got to work with students. I got to work with non-government organizations. And I got to work with IEEE student branches all around the world. I have been to India. I have been fortunate enough to travel to India. But to do these projects, it didn't require that I go to India. It actually just required that I be able to communicate with you, just like this. And the skills that we learned and the project management things that we got together, that's how we did it all. We just worked together and we came up with common goals, and we had lots of ideas. Now, I can't understand a problem that's facing a community if I'm not in that community. It's okay for somebody on the outside to say, this is what you need. And a lot of people make the mistake with technology thinking that they know how to solve problems using technology, but you have to understand the real problem. So one of the first things we did was we got these non-government organizations and student volunteers to go into rural villages to find out what types of things were facing these young girls and what type of living environments, what type of other things that they were doing, and as well as other stuff. So one of the other things we have to talk about is, how do we achieve that? Well, how do you do a project? We work on different things such as video conferencing, developing specifications, and then having experts. Remember I talked about having these experts outside look at these specs? That's where the consultants come in. So I use consultants from all around the world, and if you're local to a community, you see a community problem, we love to help you get there. So that's one way. We are really good at utilizing students all around the world. And in case you didn't know, IEEE WIE has over, and I believe it's over 450 affinity groups all around the world. So I'm sure that there's some group out there that would be able to help you get into one of these activities. And if not, we can help you get into one of those activities. So we have another question. What is the best way to start a WIE branch in a university that hasn't established IEEE branch recently? That's easy. Get 6 people to sign the petition. Then you can download it online from the WIE website and get 6 people to sign that petition. They do not need to just be women. They can be guys too, because remember, guys are part of, men are part of our community, supporting us and supporting our goals as well. Men happen to have daughters, sisters, mothers, and they want to support them and they want to see their daughters and sisters successful. So you can get their signatures, start that, and you will also get a WIE startup package, and then you're on your way. If you need ideas on, okay, what should I do to get these different things, you might be able to say, you know, all right, I don't want to do outreach, I only want to do networking. Choose activities that are best for your group's interests. So if you get those 6 people together and they're interested in jobs and careers, that's what you should do. Don't try to do outreach if you have no interest in doing it, because you won't be successful. You'll be successful and you probably help somebody, but people know when your heart's really not in it. So make sure that you choose activities that meet the goals of your own group. So now next one, what do I have? I have people, a question. People are busy. We need to encourage members to make employee referrals. Absolutely true. One of the things that we rarely don't have, and most of the jobs that come through to me for my students always come from past students or from past our employers in local areas. I get requests from everywhere for students, and usually they come to me, and if they know that I'm going to give them a good source of talent. And then most of the people that we look at, we've worked with, we've interacted with, and we've seen their volunteer efforts, and we know what they can do. And even if we don't know them, well, guess what? We're pretty adept engineers. We can look at somebody's resume and tell whether or not this person can meet the requirements. But one thing I want to challenge you to do is, when you see a job opening, and this is traditional for women to do this, is we see a job opening, and I'll give you an example. This is just an example. Let's say you know how to do a web page. Well, you know, so does most every 15-year-old kid around the world. So if you know how to develop a web page and you think you're an expert at doing web pages, that's nice, but don't just shoot for something that does just that one thing. Stretch your abilities, because if you're going to take a position that you can do now and do really well right now without challenging yourself, you're going to be pretty bored. So I'm always going to challenge you to say, take on something that, you know, if you know, get uncomfortable, get comfortable being uncomfortable for a little bit. And once you learn that you have this opportunity at hand, say, yeah, I can do that, but I'd have to learn this, and this other type of topic. It's good for you. And most companies, even though most women will not apply, they see the wish list, and it says, here's all the skills we're looking for, here's all the degrees you must have. And a lot of women won't apply if they don't see that they meet every single one of those requirements. And you don't need to do that. Start thinking about, well, don't point out what you don't have. Emphasize what you do have, and how that you can emphasize those skills and how you can grow them and make them flourish into something that would be a huge asset for the company. So if you're looking for employee referrals, we have entire resources available for you that can do that. IEEE Women in Engineering, we're not just a bunch of women in academia, even though I am one, but we have more than just women in academia. We're actually professionals all around the world. So wherever you are, there's a Women in Engineering member, and it doesn't, again, Women in Engineering is 1/3 of our membership is men. So it doesn't just have to be a woman that gives you the referral, it can also be a guy. So be open to that as well. Do I have any more questions? Let's see what else we have. I have let's go back to a little bit about building a network. How do you build a network? You don't physically have to be there to build a network. I cannot tell you how many, I will call them best friends, I've made in IEEE Women in Engineering through email and through phone calls. And it's kind of funny, because when you finally do meet them after working with them for 2 or 3 years and you see them in person, you don't recognize them. But at the same time, it's like you've known them all your life. And I think that that's a wonderful, wonderful feeling to have, is when you meet all these people and that you grow to work with them and respect them. And you develop friendships. One of the things I'm really going to encourage you to do is, IEEE has so many scholarships for students and so many different awards for volunteerism and professionalism and technical achievements. And again, women won't typically think of themselves for these different types of awards. And I think that you should. I think that if you've done something that you're proud of, you should get a couple of your friends and say, I think I meet this award, and could you maybe write me a letter? And I'd be very, very surprised if someone would say no. I really believe that you should try to do this for yourself. One of the things that I'm really good at is I will fight and I will do everything I can to help everybody else. And sometimes the person who's left behind, or people turn around and say, well, what about you? What about yourself? And that's true, because I share the same anxieties and same types of issues that you all do as well. And when my friends do step forward and say, we're going to nominate you for something, it's really an honor. It doesn't matter whether you win. The fact that people thought a lot of you to even go to those measures really makes a big difference. So I'm going to encourage all of you, if you have a friend or colleague that's been a wonderful role model or mentor to you, go ahead and nominate them for one of those great awards. And if you're a student, those some beautiful, great awards that would pay 4 to 6 years of college education for graduate school. If you could get one of those, go on to school. Any school would be happy to have you if you come with your own funding. You'll get to pick your own university or institution to take you on. I would love to see more women applicants at my university, at every other university around the world. And unfortunately, most women, I would say less than 10% of women graduating in the STEM fields, science and technology fields, will take the challenge to go on to graduate school. That's why I was really proud of my Nerd Girls program, is because over 95% of every girl that's participated in my program, every one of them has gone on to a graduate program within 3 years of graduating. And believe me, I'm after that other 5% who hasn't. So some of them have gone on after I pestered them for many, many years. But I think that it's really important that if you have the opportunity to do that, apply. Most women, again, think about, say, well, I'll apply, but I don't have the money to go to school. There are lots of funding opportunities for you. When you apply to a school, professors have something called research assistant positions or teaching assistant positions that are funded. They'll pay your tuition plus a small stipend living expense for you to study for a number of years to complete your degree. The trade-off is, as a teaching assistant, you'll be required to service and do some courses, which is a great opportunity because you get to interact with students, you get to see the labs, and you get to do a lot of hands-on, and you get teaching experience. So if someday you want to be a professor, then maybe that's an opportunity you never thought about. But if you're just retooling for industry, it's also a great opportunity because you'll get to see some of the projects and interact with some of the professionals that come in that are mentoring these students. So we have a question. What advice would I give to a lady who is considering going back to work? The first thing you need to do is look at your resume. And don't get depressed about it either. Look at your resume and then try to look at a type of job out there. Do a comparison. Look up what kind of jobs are out there that you would like to go for. And then look at your resume and say, what could I do to make my resume match that job position? And what you might say is, okay, I'm missing this programming language. That's easy enough. Matter of fact, IEEE's e-learning, I doubt there's a programming language that the e-learning center doesn't have that you could quickly ramp up and come up to speed on. If there's some other skill that you would need, maybe there's maybe there's not just a software course, but maybe there's some different types of things that you need more management-wise. Those types of things, again, those are things that we can get through experience, through volunteer positions. One of the greatest things that I got through when I asked about IEEE was, what is it that makes IEEE special? You get to play with lots and lots of money to do management without, they trust us to do management with other people's money. And when we're successful, we make IEEE successful, and we learn from these experiences. And I think that that's a great opportunity. I've gotten to manage budgets probably bigger than most of my colleagues who are still in industry. And I think that that's a great, not only a great trust that they bestow on us, but it's an experience that makes us relevant regardless of which field of business we go into. One of the questions is, where would one find the list of IEEE scholarships and awards? If you type in IEEE awards and scholarships, it should bring you right up to the awards page, and all the deadlines should come up. So for instance, I'm well aware that there's the graduate fellowships, the Fortescue, and there's another one coming up. The deadlines for those are coming up. Those are the ones I was talking about that will pay that you'll pay full scholarships to send you to graduate school. And there's also the awards page. If you just search on IEEE awards, you should be able to see that page. And actually, I can ask our staff right now, if I could ask Kiana, if you're out there, could you have someone actually send me that link so we could post it and have everybody know where that is? So we have the exact link, and we can even put it on the Facebook page. So I think that would be a great link to have there. But there's a list of awards and deadlines. There's a lot of awards that are not highly sought after. A lot of people here in the United States go after National Science Foundation grants and scholarships, and those are highly, highly, highly competitive. And it breaks my heart when I see the IEEE ones, which are just as scholarly, which is just as prestigious, and come with a lot more money, have very few applicants. So it's a great opportunity. It's a smaller pool, and we all know, since we're all doing math and science, we know that when you play a lottery with a lot less entries in it, your chances of hitting are much greater. One of the questions comes from Jasmine, saying, are there teaching positions or scholarships offered to people coming to study from abroad? Yes, 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 yes. As a matter of fact, my lab, I've had lots of women and men from all around the world come to work in my lab. We actually love diversity. And it's one of the ways that I learn about your culture, and I learn about what's going on for women in your countries as I get you to come here and share that with me. I was really fortunate to have women from Pakistan and Dubai and other countries in the UAE, as well as Kuwait, work in my lab, and I think that, as well as India and China. And I think that when you have people, even from the other Eastern countries, Asia, all the other countries, I've really had a lot of different people come into my lab and work with my team. And it's a wonderful experience because my students get to interact and learn about different cultures. I get to interact with you and learn about different cultures and different learning styles or different experiences that you've had. And sometimes, especially when I'm teaching an approach, so it's great to hear that, well, I learned it this way. And I get to see how, my teaching style or my research compares to what's going on somewhere else. And I interact a lot with international professors. So for instance, right now, I'm hiring in my lab, and I will ask professors from Turkey and Greece and Italy and anybody I meet that happen to be working with at the time, saying, please send me, if you have undergraduates that are graduating and want to come to the United States, please send them to me. Send them to me. And I'm sure that there's plenty of IEEE professors that work in academia that think the same way. And it really makes a huge difference for me. I receive probably 500 emails a week from students all around the world. And I'll give you some hints. The first thing that makes me hit the delete button is you say, dear sir, I'm interested in your research. And it's like, okay, you didn't even bother to find out that I'm not a sir. And the second thing is when I get more like a blanket email that says, I'm really interested in your research in, I don't know, in rocket science. I don't do rocket science. So make sure if you're going to send somebody an email that you really want to go to that group, that you really investigated what they do. So if I'm going to take the time to respond to you, I want to know that I just wasn't one of a million professors you sent information to. But most labs are hiring, and we are looking for good students all the time. So I would suggest, if you're interested, applications are due soon. So most of them are due in the fall time. And if you're interested, or if you're coming, you want to come next year, or even for January, a lot of them are all coming up. So make sure that you apply, and make sure if you're going to email somebody that you do identify yourself as an IEEE member, and that student member, and talk about where you're from in your branch, as well as any activities you've done. When I see that a student is connected with IEEE, that immediately tells me that they're vested in their career, that they're serious about pursuing some different opportunities, and it's not just about taking the courses, taking the tests, and getting the grades and getting out and then worrying about what to do with their life. and also the projects that you've done. Even if they don't relate to my research, I usually go for the person more than I do for the skill set. The other thing that you need to know is that grades don't really mean a lot to me. They might mean a lot to other professors, but they're not so much for me. Why? Because in the real world, the answers are not in the back of the book, and they're not available online either. So I'm looking for solutions and people who are willing to share with me their creativity and their imagination, and who are not going to be afraid to try new things because they're afraid they're going to get a B or in the course, or get a lower grade, and take less risks. I want those risk takers. So if you're out there and you're looking to go to grad school, American schools are really open to diversity, so go ahead and apply. Any other questions from anybody abroad? I would love to hear from folks all around the world. I really enjoy talking to you, and it's really wonderful that we get this opportunity from IEEE Women in Engineering to do such a broadcast. Now, one of the other things is, I don't know if you've noticed, again, if you are a student member, you should receive the IEEE Women in Engineering magazine electronically for free. And for those of you that are members, your IEEE membership in Women in Engineering helps us conduct that outreach. It's really the only engineering publication that it meets both professionals and is targeting its students. We send it out to schools for recruitment. We send it out to guidance counselors and educators so that they know what engineers are doing, and it relates and speaks to them as a community, and speaks to them not in the technical terms to intimidate them, but to welcome them and show them the impact that engineering careers can have on the world. So here's one of the truths. Is it true that women in engineering are falling into the minority department at colleges today? Is it true? I'll read it again. Is it true that women in engineering are falling into the minority department at colleges today? We have diversity programs. I think that's what my university, they call it diversity programs. And diversity programs include helping students that are what we call underrepresented groups. Now, if you ask, are women in that group of underrepresented groups? Absolutely true. Yes, we are. Women in engineering is still one of the most underrepresented fields for women. And one of the problems that we see is twofold. One, again, very few young girls are going into the STEM fields, the science technology fields. And number two is, even if they get to the university, sometimes we find that their preparation and that where they come from is drastically different across the line. So maybe you come from a public institution, maybe you come from a small institution where you didn't have calculus or more advanced math. You come into a university and all of a sudden you find that, oh, everybody else around me knows calculus, I don't, so I'm not going to be successful. So universities now recognizing this imbalance in preparation, and rather than seeing young women and other underrepresented groups get intimidated by that, we have something called bridge programs, which essentially will assign you a mentor and help you take some courses or get you the training you need to help bring you up to speed on the skills that you feel that you don't have compared to your classmates. And think about when you go to a university, you know, it's a totally different world. You've got people coming from, you know, private institutions and the best institutions in the world, and you might come from a small school that just didn't have the resources to teach, or even a teacher that knew calculus. So does that mean you can't be an engineer? Absolutely not. So these bridge programs or these diversity programs are meant to help students like that in those categories who predominantly are the ones affected by not having these types of resources from the institutions, the undergraduate, or from the high school, secondary school institutions that they've come from. I've even had women come from countries where educating women was quite rare and not popular, and they do it at their own risk. So coming here, if we get a woman like that who just comes from a place where she had to struggle just to get her education in the face of dangers, we are going to jump through whatever we can to help you get through that, because we're proud of you for making it that far. And if you can make it that far, if you can get to our door, then we're going to make sure that, as I say, you run through that finish line and get your engineering degree. And we're going to do everything we can after you get your engineering degree to make sure that you find a satisfying and successful position that's going to give you the financial independence to make you and your family healthy and happier and brighter futures. there any other questions? Because we have about 5 more minutes. We have 5 more minutes, and one of the things that I'm really proud of is that IEEE Women Engineering has grown over the past few years, and the fact that we can now reach so many people with technology is absolutely awesome. I'm talking to you right here from my home office, and it's kind of neat because normally before I would have to go off site to a special expensive facility, and now I can do it right here. So I have another question. It says, do you think we are asking WIE to carry international community and the traditional minority group? Are we asking? I think that we are trying to build a community around the world of men and women that remove barriers for women, and that we are here as a resource. So when you feel that you are, that there's something in your way, that you can share that with us, because you're not alone. And there's been so many women, including myself, who has faced every single challenge imaginable. Maybe not due to some of the cultural things that different countries where women aren't allowed to be educated, but even here in the United States, we still have lots and lots of women that face challenges that have nothing to do with their abilities. There's so many social things and economic types of things, and none of that should prevent us from being able to go into the STEM fields. No one should be able to say women don't belong in technology. No one should be able to say, well, you've had a child, so now you should stay home and that's it. That's the end of you. You should be able to continue to pursue your career and to keep and contribute to the community. We are really, honestly, if you look at countries like Dubai, they have more women in engineers than, and even India and China. They have more women in engineering and technology than the United States. And everybody thinks the United States, which, I love the U.S., but a lot of us think that the U.S. is, the most forthcoming with women in technology or for women's liberation. And yet, why do we predominantly suffer from a lack of women in engineering? Well, I know the answer to that, but for those other countries, even though they're graduating 40, 50% women in their engineering programs, why aren't those women getting jobs? Why aren't they allowed to come here to the United States and get jobs? We need them, and their own country needs them. Why are lesser quality candidates getting jobs over women? Those are things that we need to work on, that we need both men and women to work on. We can't just be a community of women solving women's problems, because if there's no women in charge, we need to change mindsets. And that's a hard thing to do. That's a really hard thing to do. I have another question. A student is asking me, he says, I am a vice president of an IEEE student branch in my university, and I have a hard time attracting women, females. Well, one of the things I think people think is that IEEE means you have to be an electrical or computer engineer. Did you ever think of how many students just like to write mobile applications? Essentially, any student interested in technology, I think, unless you're in athletics or cooking classes or a cooking major, any discipline student in any university can join IEEE. And I think one of the things that people are afraid is that we really are just about electrical engineering because it's in our name. But you have to remember, most of the members of IEEE are across, they're doing computers, they're doing programming, they're doing physics, they're doing math, we're doing biology, we're doing medicine. And I think that you need to go and reach out beyond your department and just say, hey, who likes to write mobile apps? Did you know that we ran IEEE Women Engineering, we ran a hackathon in conjunction with Microsoft and the Nerd Girls, and we did a hackathon in a box over a weekend. And women learned how to write mobile applications to help against human trafficking. So getting people in your university who are interested in law and diplomacy are really vested and interested in those types of topics, so you can go reach out beyond them. I would say you need better marketing of the types of thing IEEE is doing. So if you talk about mobile apps to help humanity, or if you can talk about assistive technologies, or even how to use things or technology to help track and do data analysis. So, and maybe the biology department's doing experiments and they don't know how to do databases. There's all these different types of opportunities to get people in who are interested in technology to join you. And that's probably the best way to get them. If you stay with an electrical engineering department and there's no women in electrical engineering, well, that's going to be like me when I started my university. They hired me to be a mentor for women, and when I got there, there were no women. So you have to reach beyond your boundaries. And that's really what all today's talk is all about, is reach beyond your boundaries. And with that, and with IEEE Women Engineering behind you, and me, and my nerd girls, and IEEE in general, we're going to help you get there.